to hang out or play video games or something like that for like fun. They don't, and I think that's why if you hear most adults, when you hear something, oh, I don't want to learn anything anymore, because they were forced, right? It's terrible. Like learning is a great thing, like you said, higher knowledge. I think that they also, I don't know if school like dumbed down the knowledge, but I think that there's so much like knowledge that people can like you can learn.
Yeah.
Not the simple that you don't like. It's really very interesting how they do it.
Well, one thing that's, interesting about that I didn't really understand until I became a teacher in the public school system, but the way that schools are really structured is that they're really governed by the government. They're governed really by the county, at least where I live, they're really governed by the county government. And so what ends up happening is you end up having politicians that are getting brought in, and there are election cycles every few years. So every few years, the people who are really in charge of a lot of the nuts and bolts about education, they're changing. Not all of them, but a lot of those people are changing. And the thing about politicians is that by and large, most of them do not have experience in education, either as a teacher or as an administrator or anything of that. Now, I'm not saying that none of them do, but most of them do not. And so you have kind of this system where the people that are making the decisions aren't necessarily in tune with what goes on within the classroom. And by and large, what they want to do is they want to appease the public. Okay, so they want to make sure that they're creating systems that parents agree with, that voters agree with. And so a lot of times the way that the system is set up is really just set up in this attempt to keep people happy without those people really knowing how the system is run. So it's kind of like saying if you were to go into a restaurant, instead of having a restaurant owner who had worked in restaurants his whole life, just taking him on out and pulling somebody out of their seat who had been in the restaurant before and saying, okay, you go ahead and get in charge of this. They don't really know. And it's not really their fault if you think about it, because they were put in that position that they have to take care of education, but they're running something a lot of times that they really just don't understand. And so there's this funny phenomenon that happens with schools, which is like every few years when there's a new election cycle, there'll be some new changes, they'll come up with some new tests, or they'll come up with some new program that they want you to follow, and none of it makes any sense, and all the teachers freak out because they don't know how to manage it. And then just as soon as they start to understand the system, some new guys come in and they change it all up, and there's this whole new cycle that happens again. And that was something that I saw because I taught for 7 years, and it was like every 2 years when there was an election cycle, there would be something like that where there'd be all these crazy changes that really had nothing to do with true education. And one of the things that would kind of get to me is that one of the things that they seem very intent on doing, and I understand why they were trying to do this, but was trying to come up with a curriculum that was standard for all students. So like if you were teaching history, you were sure to teach all of this stuff on this list, rather than just leaving it all willy-nilly, let the teacher decide what they want to teach. And on some levels, that's a good thing. But on other levels, it's not, because who decides what's on that list? And you could have somebody who has, like for me, when I was teaching psychology, like I said, I was raised in a family. So I had a very broad amount of information of psychology. And it was like you're being put into this little tiny box of this is the only stuff you can teach. So you're right. And people want to learn interesting things. People want to learn what excites them. And people want to teach what excites them too. So if you have a teacher that's restricted, they're not speaking from a place of excitement. The kids aren't having any fun with it. If the kids want to learn something that's a little bit different or not on the curriculum, oh, we don't have time for that because we got to get ready for this test. So the funny thing is that if you wanted to kind of, what I just ended up being was kind of like this rogue teacher, which I would kind of do what, I made it look like I was doing what they wanted me to do, but really I was kind of doing this over here. But that's kind of silly that you feel like you have to be secretive and hide in order to have a quality classroom. But anyway, I know I just went off on a tangent there, but you could get me going on this subject for days because I lived it.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Like, I feel like because I feel like everybody around me when I was like younger, because I used to be a class clown.
Hmm.
I don't like how school is strict the way like it's the same routine. All you do is go to school and you try to get good grades. And I was thinking about grades, right? Like I talked to my friend, and I was like, people when people say you get A's and all that, they think that you're really smart. They defy you how intelligent you are, while a C or D student, they defy you how stupid you are. But how can you define somebody if you just based on a grade and testing?
Yeah, and it's very true because when I was young, there was not so much standardized testing. This is kind of ties into it's not grades, but it is kind of similar. Is that I have young children now, and so they're going in and getting these scores that tell them it kind of the same thing. This is the really smart score. This is the kind of smart score. This is the not so smart score. And so you have little children like 5, 6, 7 years old, and they kind of get this label put on them when they're very young. Oh, you're not smart. Well, through law of attraction, what you believe in, you start to collect more evidence of that. And I think that's what you see a lot with these kids is that they just got one teacher somewhere down the road really early that didn't think they were that smart. And so then all of a sudden they start having this experience over and over again. And eventually they just stop caring about school. Because why would you care if it's just telling you that you're no good? You know,
Yeah,
I'm with you. I don't really buy into the whole grading concept. And I have perfectly good reason not to, because I was one of those people who I got great grades, went to college. I did everything in the right sequence. But what I do today I could have done this without any college degree at all. I could have saved a lot of money and just done this. So, all of that stuff really doesn't matter. A lot of times it's just labels that we end up putting on people. And for some kids, it comes out to be a very negative label. And then they have to spend a lot of time trying to shake that belief system that they're not good enough intellectually.
yeah, I do agree. What you say about the law of attraction, or the whatever we believe is come out of reality, right? Is the confirmation bias. I think you heard of this before.
Mm-hmm.
Self-fulfilling prophecy has to do with it too. I believe that whatever we believe to be really strongly, it comes true. So how do you experience the law of attraction? I would like to understand that one. Because go ahead.
How do I experience it?
Yeah, law of attraction wise, like, because I know that you're into law of attraction, you're teaching it too.
Yeah.
For those who want to, because I see over the years people have been struggling with the law of attraction. So how would how would you help them if they keep struggling but they know it? Like, because there are some people that know it, but they can't get it right or something. So how can you help them with that one?
Well, I think it's important to understand that a lot of times the things that people think they want
Mhm.
are more based on fears than enjoyment. So if we were talking about school, just to use it for an example, let's say that we have a student who wants to get an A, but not because he likes the class, not because he enjoys learning, not because it's fun for him, but more because he is worried about what it means about him, or he's trying to appease his parents. So if somebody's going into a dream, something that they want for themselves, but the reason why they want it is because they're running away from a fear, or they're trying to do something to build themselves up so they can buy into a limitation, then what will continue to be re-experienced by that person is they won't get it, or they'll get it in a way that's very unfulfilling so that they continue to feel bad about themselves, because at the root of the desire is I don't feel good enough. So the only thing that they can get from it is a reflection that says I'm not good enough. So that's one of the things, like when I work with people one-on-one, a lot of times if they have specific desires that aren't working, that's kind of one of the things that we would look at is there kind of a fear underneath this? Is this a true interest? Because just like we were talking about with education, like learning is fun, creation is fun, all of this stuff is fun. If it's not fun, it means you're doing it in a way that's not connected to your higher truth. You're disconnected in some way. You're chasing after something that isn't really going to make you feel good. And the funny thing is, when it comes to the law of attraction, the only reason why people want things, they want money or a relationship or good grades or a car, the only reason that they want it is because they want to experience joy. And so if joy is not at the root of the desire, it isn't going to work. So that's kind of the thing to understand, is that if you're reaching, a lot of times when people struggle with the law of attraction, it's just because what they're reaching for is something that points to something bad that they believe about themselves. It isn't true. And they have to let go of that first in order to experience the having